Lights Out, Chapter 27, Part 4. Sorry for the... best I can do. Alright. Alright, so they got another truck with a Lexan windshield. Could have got an SAR, super abrasion resistant Lexan. Oh well. When the meeting was adjourned, everyone stayed around and chatted and then got their water. Mark noticed that while John and his family were absent from the meeting, his wife did come by to get some water. The security meeting took quite a while. Gunny explained that the next things he thought needed to be done were to frame in the foxholes with wood and to put sandbags around them. He had some old canvas sandbags, but they would need to make or find a lot more. Susan suggested that perhaps they could use some pillowcases and fill them with sand, and everyone agreed that was a good idea. Gunny said there was no need to buy sand. They could use the dirt they dug up to fill the bags. He also felt they needed to try to finish the fence as quickly as possible. Then he explained how he felt they needed more guards on duty. Ted asked him how many they needed. He said that it depended on what they came up with for watching the sides and back of the property. He said he felt they really needed 3 at the front starting tomorrow. In fact, he wanted to put 3 guys from the class he taught today up front as soon as Jim finished with them. Then he'd train the other 20 for gate duty on Thursday and Friday. He shared his thoughts with the group about the refugees and the danger they posed. The biggest obstacle they needed to overcome was how to call for more guards if the situation demanded it. Not only how, but who and how they would know where to go. They knew they had a few working CB radios, but there was nowhere near enough to put one in every house. They discussed several options, but none of them seemed like they'd work as quickly as may be necessary. So they agreed to think about it some more. When they discussed how to watch the sides and back of the subdivision, Mark came up with the idea of building towers for the guards similar to elevated deer blinds. He said that a person could make out a deer 500 yards away from one if they had a clear line of sight. Gunny and the others thought this suggestion had merit. He pulled out the map and put X's where they could put the watch stands. One on each back corner would cover the back and 500 yards of the sides. One more on each side fence, about 450 yards back from the county road, would cover the rest of the sides. With 2 people in each tower and 3 on the gate, 11 people could cover the entire perimeter fairly well. Everyone started trying to figure out how many men they would need to cover 11 spots 24 hours a day. Gunny interrupted them. We'll need more than 11 people a shift if and we really want to secure things. Why would we need more? Ted asked. At night, nobody's going to be able to see as far. You got to have 1 or 2 roving teams after dark. That'll give anyone trying to sneak in something to worry about. You'll need 2 or 3 men for each team. The committee members sat silently as they took in what Gunny was saying. We also need a way to watch the road in both directions. We shouldn't be finding out that we've got visitors when they get to the gate. A truckload or 2 of MZBs could be on the guards at the gate before they knew what was happening or had time to call for backup. I walked over to the hill on the other side of the road today, and you can see at least half a mile in both directions from there. We should put an observation post up on top and man it 24 hours a day. Maybe in the morning we can all go take a look. Everyone nodded their head. So how many do we need on duty at one time, Gunny? Ted asked. The 11 perimeter guards, 1 or 2 in the OP, and 2 teams of 3 rovers. That's up to 19 men, Gunny answered. Of course, it'll be less in the daytime. How are we going to do that? Mark asked. Even if we went with 8-hour shifts and no days off, that's over 50 men. And if we go with the 4-hour shifts that Gunny likes, it's more like 100. We don't have that many men. Susan cleared her throat. Excuse me, Mr. Macho, but why do all of the guards have to be men? Mark swallowed. Well, I guess they don't have to be. Fucking A, she answered. Mark knew she'd use the F word to make a point that was all too clear to the men in the meeting. Mark shifted in his chair during the silence that seemed to last a long time. So, Mark, how do you make those towers? Chaparro asked. Mark was doubly thankful for Chaparro right now. He knew that Chaparro already knew how to do it, but he drew the welder a picture anyway. Then they talked about where the building of the tower should fit in priority-wise. They all agreed that the fence was first, and then the hitch for the Jeep. These could come after that if nothing happened. Chaparro said he had enough material to build one, but they'd need to buy some more to build the others. He also mentioned that he could use some help. Even if no one knew how to weld, just a gopher would increase his production. Mark promised to ask for volunteers tomorrow at the meeting. "Hey, Gunny," Ted asked, "could we train some of the dogs in the neighborhood to help with the patrolling?" "That's not a bad idea," Gunny said. "Do you know anyone who has any experience training dogs?" "No, I don't, but why can't we just put them on a leash and have them walk around us? Maybe we could have one at the gate, too. Without training, they might be more of a liability than an asset. What if one of them barks at the wrong time or gets scared and tries to bolt? The dogs they use in the military go through some very intense training before they get used for any kind of duty." "We could ask Doc Vasquez if he knows anybody," Susan said. Everybody agreed that if they could find a dog trainer, he could successfully train some animals, they would try to incorporate them into their plans. They arranged to meet at the gate to check out the hill at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the meeting was adjourned. Mark and Gunny walked back into the house to have a little meeting with their families about food. After talking it over some, they agreed to try to get up to a year's worth of staples like flour, sugar, and salt. Then they'd try to stock up on things they couldn't grow, like rice and some canned foods. If they could get to the store enough, then they'd worry about providing variety for their diet. Mark asked if there was anything else they might need to buy before money ran out. George suggested that they buy a grain mill to grind corn. He said that they might even try to grow some wheat, and they could make flour if they had a mill. Gunny was concerned with having enough weapons for all the guards. Most were using their deer rifles, and while better than nothing, they were too slow to fire and reload. Mark said he could check with Jerry and see if they had anything they could buy. Jess said she'd like to see if they could buy some clothes. Lisa wanted paper and pens for the girls' schoolwork. Jim said they could use some AA and D-size batteries. Sam wanted to make sure they had plenty of her favorite shampoo, and David was worried if they had enough toilet paper. Everyone agreed that toilet paper was a necessity, and the women put it on their grocery list for the next day. Since Jim was teaching the guards tomorrow, Mark was going to take the crew to Kroger. At this point, the family meeting kind of dissolved into multiple conversations going on at the same time. Mark told the other men that they needed someone to help Chaparro with his work. Jim asked if they were looking for any particular skills, and Mark told him that Chaparro would take anyone with welding skills, but he also could just use a gopher. David, overhearing this, told his father that he'd like to work with Chaparro. Mark told his son he'd talk with Chaparro about it in the morning, but he warned the young man that even if Chaparro said yes, this was not going to get in the way of his schoolwork, and that he better take his duties seriously. David promised he would. Mark went to bed that night, in the house no less, feeling pretty good about the plans they'd made, but wondering how they would pay for everything they needed.